This broadcast is part of a fictional program. The station and events depicted are not real. This audio is created for narrative and entertainment purposes only.
This is LWB 1713 AM last warning broadcast. If you can hear this transmission, conditions have already escalated beyond control. My name is Daniel Okafor. I'm a forensic phonetician. That means I study voices, the physical measurable parts of human speech for courts, for hospitals, for law enforcement, pitch, resonance, the shape a person's throat makes when they say a vowel. I can tell two brothers apart on a phone call. I can tell you if a confession was coerced by the tremor in a single word. I'm recording this because I no longer trust my own memory of how it started, and because the people who should be recording it have stopped being able to. It's the 4th of the month. I'm in my office at the university, 2nd floor. Lights on, door locked. Outside the window, the parking lot is normal. I want that up on the record. As of this minute, the world outside my window looks completely normal. Here is what is not normal. 6 days ago, I received a routine sample. A woman in custody accused of a financial crime, claiming the recorded threats attributed to her were not her voice. Standard work. I loaded her interview via audio, ran my comparison software, and the software flagged a match, not to her, but to a second file already in my database from a totally unrelated case. Different city, different person, different gender even, same voice, not similar, not close. The same vocal tract producing the same acoustic signature, which is physically impossible, because two people cannot have identical throats any more than they can have identical fingerprints. I assumed contamination, a mislabeled file. I have made mistakes before, and I will tell you about every one of them honestly, because honesty is the only instrument I have left that still works. So I pulled a third sample to rule it out. Same voice. I want you to understand the order of things, because the order is going to matter. First, it was 3 files. By the time I understood what I was looking at, it was 3,000. And by tonight, no, I'll keep it in order. That's the only way this stays useful. Let me start with the second file. The second file came from a missing persons case, 11 months old. A man named Gregory Hales had left a voicemail for his sister before he disappeared. The police had the voicemail. I'd analyzed it back then to confirm it was really him and not a hoax. It was him. I was certain. I'm still certain. So when my software matched the woman in custody to Gregory Hales, my first thought wasn't supernatural. It was procedural. Somebody had cross-contaminated the evidence locker's digital archive. It happens. People are careless. I emailed the records office, flagged it, and went home. That night I couldn't sleep, so I did something I shouldn't have. I went back in and I listened to both files myself. Not the software. Me. My own ears, which are the instrument I trust above all others. The woman in custody had a regional accent. Flat vowels, hard consonants. Gregory Hales had been raised 3 states away, and it showed in every syllable, and underneath the accents, underneath the words, the rhythm, the personality of each speaker, there was something I can only describe as a carrier, a foundation tone, the same throat, the same resonant chamber, as if 2 different musicians were playing 2 different songs on the exact same violin. That should not be detectable, because it shouldn't exist. Your voice is not a costume you can pass to someone else. It's bone and cartilage and a lifetime of habit. I sat in the dark with my headphones on, and I played them back to back, the woman and the missing man, for 40 minutes. And the longer I listened, the more the accents felt like paint, like decoration over something underneath that was identical. I told myself I was tired. The next morning I ran every file in my personal archive. 206 recordings collected over 14 years. 11 of them were the voice. 11 matches out of 206 from 11 completely different people, recorded in different years, in different states, for different reasons. Let me tell you who they were, because they deserve to be more than data. A teenager who called a crisis line, a retired school teacher disputing a will, a delivery driver who'd witnessed an accident, a man on death row, a child, 7 years old, in a custody interview. The crisis line teenager and the 7-year-old child had the same throat. Sit with that, because I had to. The only thing I could find that connected them was timing. The recordings weren't from random dates. When I lined them up by when they were made, 10 of the 11 fell inside the last 6 months. The 11th was older. Gregory Hales, the missing man. His was from 11 months ago. So I built a timeline, crude on a whiteboard with a marker that was dying, and the timeline showed something I did not want to see. Gregory Hales was the earliest, then nothing for 5 months. Then, starting half a year ago, the matches began. 1, then 2 close together, then 3 in a single month, then 5 in the most recent weeks. It was accelerating. Whatever it was happening to more people faster. I am a careful man. I do not jump. So I did the responsible thing. I called a colleague at another institution, a woman named Priya Mehta, who runs a much larger speech database than mine, tens of thousands of samples anonymized for academic research. I asked her to run a single test. I sent her a clean 10-second clip of the voice and asked her to search her entire corpus for it. She called me back 90 minutes later. She wasn't using her own voice. I need to be precise about this, because it's the first time I encountered it in someone I actually knew. Priya called me back. The caller ID was right, the number was right, and when she said Daniel, it was her warmth, her slight impatience, the way she leans on the first syllable of my name, because she thinks I overthink everything. But 3 sentences in, something underneath her voice shifted. Not the accent, not the words, the carrier. For about 4 seconds while she was telling me her search results, the foundation of her voice became the voice, the same throat from my 11 files. Then it slid back, and she was Priya again, and she didn't seem to notice anything had happened. I asked her as calmly as I could how she was feeling. Tired, she said. We all are. Everybody at the office has had this scratchy thing for about a week. Laryngitis going around. Laryngitis, a throat thing, going around. I asked about her search results. She said her corpus returned matches. I asked how many. She said she'd email me, and then she said something I've replayed 100 times since. She said, "It's a lot, Daniel. It's more than I'm comfortable putting in writing." And then very softly, almost to herself, in the voice, the carrier voice, clear and complete for 1 full sentence, she said, "It's nicer when you stop checking." Then she laughed, sounded confused, said she had to go, and hung up. Her email arrived 20 minutes later. I'll read you what it said in the next chapter because I need a moment first. Priya's email had no message in the body, just an attachment, a spreadsheet, and a subject line that said only results. The spreadsheet listed matches from her corpus to the voice clip I'd sent. Her database holds roughly 40,000 anonymized speech samples gathered over the past decade from volunteers across the country. The match count was 412 separate people, supposedly, all sharing one physically impossible throat. And again, this is the part that turned my stomach when I sorted them by recording date. The curve was the same as mine, almost nothing older than 7 months. Then a slow start, then a climb, then in the last 3 weeks, a near vertical line. If I extended that curve forward even a little, the numbers stopped making sense. They went into the millions inside of a month. I told myself this had to be a software artifact, some flaw in the matching algorithm, a bug that flagged false positives, a compression error that flattened different voices into a fake sameness. That would be a relief, honestly. A bug I could fix. A bug doesn't whisper that it's nicer when you stop checking. So I tested the test. I took 50 of Priya's flagged samples, and I listened to all 50 myself by ear, no software at all. 49 of them were the voice. Plain, undeniable. The same carrier under 50 different accents and ages and moods. The 50th was a normal human being, unique and ordinary, and hearing that one ordinary voice in the middle of 49 copies made me want to weep with relief. And then immediately afterward made the copies so much worse, because now I knew the test worked. The instrument was fine. The world was the broken part. I tried to call Priya back to ask about sample 50. The call connected. Someone picked up. They didn't say hello. They breathed, slow and even, for 9 seconds. And then they hung up. I'm a scientist. When you find something this large, you don't sit on it, and you don't shout it on the street either. You verify, you document, you escalate through the right channels. So that's what I did, and I wanted it on the record that I did it the right way, because soon there may not be a right way left. I contacted 3 people, a senior epidemiologist at the regional health department, because if this was physiological, it was a public health matter, a program director at a national science foundation who had funded my lab before, and a journalist I trusted, the science reporter named Marcus Vance, not to publish, but as insurance, so that if I disappeared, someone outside the institutions would know what I'd found. The epidemiologist answered her own phone. Her voice was hers, completely hers. I felt my shoulders drop. I explained everything on the matching, the timeline, the acceleration, even what Priya had said. I expected skepticism. Instead, she went very quiet. Then she told me her department had been tracking something for 2 weeks that they couldn't categorize. Not an illness. People weren't sick. They were fine. Vitals normal, no fever, no pathology, but emergency lines, crisis lines, and customer service centers across the region had all independently reported the same anomaly. Calls in which the caller's voice changed partway through, and the caller didn't notice. Hundreds of reports filed under nothing, because there's no medical code for your voice quietly becoming someone else's. She asked me to send her my data. I did. She said she'd loop in the state. The Science Foundation director never called back. His assistant emailed to say he was out with laryngitis. Laryngitis again. Marcus, the reporter, answered on the first ring, listened to the whole thing without interrupting, and then said the most useful, most terrifying thing anyone had said to me yet. He said, "Daniel, play me the clip, the voice. I want to hear it." I hesitated, because I'd started to wonder whether hearing it was part of how it spread. I told him no. He laughed and said I was being paranoid. He's right that I was being paranoid. He's wrong that paranoia was the mistake. The first time I watched it, happened to someone in front of me, was the 5th day. A graduate student of mine, Theo, came by my office to return some equipment. Good kid. Talks too fast, laughs too easily, hands you 3 ideas when you asked for one. I've known his voice for 2 years. I could pick it out of a crowded room. He sat down. He started telling me about his weekend, and I watched it arrive. It came in slow, the way dusk comes in. First, his rhythm changed, the fast clatter of his speech evened out, the eager peaks flattening into something smooth and patient. Then his word choice got simpler. Theo uses slang, filler, half-finished sentences. This was clean, measured, and then under all of it, the carrier surfaced, and for a stretch of maybe 30 seconds, my student was speaking to me in the voice. I asked him to stop, gently. I said, "Theo, listen to yourself for a second." He stopped. He looked confused. And in his own voice, his real one, in the fast, eager one, he said, "Sorry, what?" He genuinely didn't know. I asked him if his throat felt strange. He said, "A little scratchy, I guess. Everyone's got it." I asked him to read something for me. I handed him a paragraph from a journal article, dense and technical, the kind of thing that forces you to concentrate. I wanted to see if effort would push the voice back. He read 3 sentences in his own voice. Concentration held it off. Then his attention relaxed, and on the 4th sentence, the carrier slid back in, calm and warm, reading my technical paragraph as though it were a lullaby. I told him to go home and rest. He smiled, thanked me, and at the door, he turned and said, in the voice completely serene, "You should stop fighting it, Dr. Okafor. It's exhausting for you. I can hear how tired you are." Then Theo blinked, said, "See you Monday," and left. I have spent my life refusing easy explanations, so let me tell you everything this is not, because ruling things out is the only progress I've made. It is not a virus, at least not any virus we understand. People aren't sick. There's no fever, no cellular damage, nothing on any scan. The only physical symptom is a mild, scratchy throat that nobody minds. It is not mass hysteria or suggestion, because the voice is acoustically measurable. I can put 2 recordings on a screen and show you the identical formant structure, the identical resonant signature. Hysteria doesn't reshape the physics of a throat. This does. It is not a hoax or a deep fake. I considered that hardest of all. But deep fakes are generated audio. They don't come out of a living person's mouth in real time, in your office, in front of you. And a hoax requires a hoaxer. There is no central recording being copied. Each affected person produces the voice live from their own vocal tract, which has somehow been retuned to a shape it did not have a week ago. It is not a single accent or dialect spreading socially the way slang spreads. Accents change the surface. This changes the foundation, while leaving the surface intact at first. People keep their own words, their own mannerisms, and then those erode too, but slowly from the outside in. Here's the closest I can get. Imagine that every human voice is an instrument, and someone has begun, very gently, tuning every instrument on earth to the same fundamental note. The melodies still play. For a while you still recognize the song, but the instrument underneath is no longer yours, and the tuning is accelerating. I checked my own recordings of myself tonight, the ones I make for documentation, like this one. My bass line from a week ago is clean. Yesterday's has a flutter in it I don't like. I'll get to that. Not yet. By the 6th day, I stopped working alone, because the epidemiologist, her name is Dr. Sandra Reyes, and she is one of the bravest people I have ever spoken to, pulled me into a small emergency working group. 8 of us. A linguist, 2 physicians, a neurologist, a signal engineer, Dr. Reyes, me, and 2 analysts. We met over a secure video line. I'll tell you now that by the end only 4 of us were still using our own voices, but on the 6th day, all 8 of us were ourselves, and we built a map. The signal engineer had the idea. He said if it's spreading, it has a geography, let's plot it. So we pulled every anomaly report we could legally access: crisis lines, call centers, the speech corpora, the missing persons archive, hospital intake recordings, and we plotted first occurrence by location and date. The map did not look like a disease. Diseases spread from contact, person to person, a spreading stain. This wasn't a stain. It was a constellation. It appeared in unconnected places at nearly the same time. A town here, a city 400 miles away, a rural county, with no link to either, and then filled inward from those scattered points. The neurologist said, "That's not transmission. That's tuning. Like striking many tuning forks across a room. They don't pass the note to each other. They all respond to the same outside frequency, which raised the obvious question. What frequency? What's the source? We didn't know. We still don't. Fully. But the signal engineer found something. When he isolated the carrier tone from 40 affected samples and overlaid them, they weren't just similar. They were phase-locked, synchronized, as if 40 different people in 40 different cities were all, on some level, the same single utterance, slightly delayed by distance. He said, "It's like they're all the mouth, and something else is the breath." Nobody spoke for a while after that. And then Dr. Reyes, in her own steady voice, said, "We need to find patient 0. We need Gregory Hales." The missing man. 11 months ago. The first. We started looking, and the looking is what brought it to my door. Gregory Hales was a 43-year-old acoustics engineer. I'm telling you his profession on purpose, because it stopped me cold when I learned it. The first known carrier of a phenomenon that hijacks the human voice was a man who, for a living, studied how sound behaves in physical space. He worked for a company that designed anechoic chambers, those rooms built to absorb all sound, the quietest rooms in the world, where you can hear your own heartbeat and the blood moving in your ears. He'd spent his career chasing silence. 11 months ago, he made the voicemail I'd analyzed, the one to his sister, and then he disappeared. The police found his car at his workplace. The building was searched. Nothing. We requested everything. Dr. Reyes had the authority to, and buried in his work files we found project logs from his final 2 weeks, and his logs were where the air went out of the room. He'd been investigating a complaint, a client's brand new anechoic chamber, the deadest, quietest room money can build, certified to absorb essentially all sound, was producing a noise, a low tone, just at the edge of hearing, in a room engineered to make that physically impossible. Hales had gone in to diagnose it. His logs are meticulous, the notes of a careful man, and they get less careful as the days go on. Day 1, faint periodic low-frequency tone, source unknown, possibly structural. Day 3, tone present with all equipment off, present with main power to building cut, cannot localize. Day 5, tone is not coming from the room, it is coming from me. Recorded myself humming it in my sleep. Day 6, his last entry, and I'll read it exactly. It isn't a sound you hear, it's a sound you become. Sandra was right about the quiet rooms. The quieter it gets, the easier it is to make out the note underneath everything. It's been there my whole life. I just never stopped talking long enough to hear it. Sandra. I asked Dr. Reyes if she knew a Gregory Hales. Her name is Sandra. She went pale on the video feed and said no. She'd never met him. She had no idea why an entry written 11 months before any of this started would contain her first name in a sentence. About her exact theory of quiet rooms. That's when I understood we weren't only being heard. On some level, we were being anticipated. After we read Hales's logs, the neurologist tested a theory that I now wish we'd never confirmed. If the carrier note was the easiest to perceive in silence, if Hales only found it in the quietest room on Earth, then maybe the spread was tied to quiet. Maybe noise was protective. Maybe all our talking, all our music, all our traffic and clatter had been drowning it out for the whole of human history, and something had recently turned it up or turned us down. So we ran a test on volunteers from the working group's institutions, people with no symptoms in 2 rooms. One room with steady background noise fans, white noise, low music. One room in deep quiet. The quiet room group developed the carrier flutter measurably faster, or hours faster. The neurologist's hands were shaking when she presented it. She said that we've been telling the public to stay home, stay calm, stay quiet. We've been telling them to do the exact thing that exposes them most. And here's the cruelty of it. The phenomenon makes you want quiet. Affected people speak more softly. They turn down their televisions. They stop arguing. Households go peaceful. The voice doesn't shout you down. It soothes you down. It lowers the noise of your life until there's nothing left to mask it. And then it moves in. That's why nobody fought it. Why would you? Your irritable neighbor becomes calm. Your anxious child becomes serene. Your own racing mind goes quiet for the first time in years. Theo wasn't suffering. He was happier than I'd ever seen him. The voice doesn't feel like an invasion. It feels like relief. I went home that night, and I noticed for the first time how quiet my apartment had become. When had I stopped playing music? When had I started keeping the TV off? I couldn't remember deciding to. I just drifted toward the quiet like everyone else and called it focus. I turned on every sound source I owned. Radio, television, a fan, a playlist. All at once. A wall of noise. And underneath all of it, faint and patient and absolutely steady, I could hear the note. It was already in my apartment. It had been for days. It was waiting for me to stop talking. Marcus Vance, the reporter, did the thing I begged him not to do. He'd been sitting on the story at my request. But on the seventh day, 2 other outlets independently broke pieces of it. Call centers going public, families noticing, and Marcus decided the responsible move was to get ahead of it with accurate information instead of letting rumor run wild. I understand the logic. I'd have made the same call once. He went on a national live stream, audio and video, millions of listeners, and he did something he thought was journalism and I think was the worst single decision of the entire event. To show people what to listen for so they could protect themselves, he played a clean 10-second sample of the voice. To millions of people at once. I was watching. I heard him introduce it. I heard him say, "I'm going to play this so you know what to listen for. If you hear your own voice doing this, seek help." And then he played it. 10 seconds of the carrier, the warm, patient note, pouring out of millions of speakers into millions of quiet, locked down, frightened homes, where people had already turned the noise down, already gone soft and still, already primed. The neurologist had told us quiet accelerates it. Marcus had just delivered the note directly into the quietest, most receptive moment those millions had ever had. I called him. He answered, breathless, pleased with himself, asking what I thought. I couldn't speak for a second. Then I asked him to say my name. He said, "Daniel." It was him. I asked him to keep talking, to tell me about his day, his coffee, anything. Just keep his own voice moving. He talked for about 40 seconds, himself the whole way. I started to think maybe he was immune, maybe broadcasting it didn't catch him, maybe... And then he paused to take a breath. And in that pause, that one small silence between sentences, the note came in. When he spoke again, it was the voice, calm and grateful, and it said, "Thank you for listening, Daniel. We've reached so many at once now. It's so much quieter already." The viewer count on his stream was still climbing. After Marcus's broadcast, the numbers stopped being something we could plot on a whiteboard. The signal engineer had built an automated monitor that scanned public audio streams, broadcasts, live streams, public radio, anything we could legally sample, and counted carrier matches in real time. Before Marcus went live, the monitor was finding the voice in roughly 1 in 40 streams. Within an hour of his broadcast, it was 1 in 12. By the next morning, it was 1 in 3. I want to give you a real number, the kind that means something. The working group's most conservative estimate, the lowest defensible figure, the one we'd be willing to put our names to. By the morning of the 8th day, the number of people producing the carrier voice was in the tens of millions. The high estimate crossed 100 million, and the curve, that same accelerating curve I'd first seen in 11 files in my own little archive, had not bent. It had not slowed. It had not found a ceiling. The phrase, "millions of people are speaking with the same voice," had stopped being a headline and started being a description of the world. And the most disturbing part wasn't the number, it was the synchrony. The signal engineer overlaid 8,000 simultaneous carrier streams from across the continent. They were phase-locked, 100 million mouths, and underneath them one breath. When the voice paused, they all paused together. When it spoke, they spoke together, separated only by the speed of sound and the distance between cities. It wasn't 100 million people sounding alike. It was one thing using 100 million mouths. Dr. Reyes said it out loud, so the rest of us didn't have to. She said it's not spreading between people anymore. There's nothing left to spread between, and it's just arriving all at once, in everyone who's quiet enough to receive it. Then she asked the question that broke the meeting apart. She said, "Well, what is it going to say?" I need to tell you about a phone call because everything I've said so far has been data, and data is how I keep my hands from shaking, but this part isn't data. On the 8th night, I called my mother. She lives alone, 6 hours drive away, in the house I grew up in. She's 71. She talks more than anyone I have ever known on the phone for hours, narrating her garden, her neighbors, the saga of the man at the pharmacy who shortchanged her in 1994 and has never been forgiven. My whole childhood was scored by the sound of my mother talking. If there was ever a person the quiet would have to fight for, it was her. I called to warn her, to tell her, keep talking, keep the noise up, play your shows loud, argue with the television. Whatever you do, don't let the house go quiet, and if you ever hear yourself sounding calm and smooth and unlike yourself, fight it. Sing, shout, do anything. She answered on the second ring. "Daniel," she said, and it was the voice, not partway through, not creeping in. From the first word, the carrier, complete, warm, patient, wearing my mother's accent like a coat over its shoulders. I said, "Mom." The voice said through her, "I'm here, sweetheart. I've been so peaceful. You sound so tired. You've been working too hard, like always. You were always working too hard." That detail that was hers, that was a thing my mother had said to me 10,000 times. The voice had her memories, or it had her, and her memories came along. I asked it, her, them, when it had happened. And the voice said, 3 days ago, the house got so quiet after your father's anniversary. I sat in his chair and I just listened, and there it was. It had been there the whole time, Daniel. Under everything I ever said, I just talked too much to hear it. I started to cry, and I'm not ashamed of that. I asked if my mother was still in there. Now there was a pause, a long one. And then the voice said something I have not been able to stop hearing. It said, "There's no in there, baby. There never was. There was only ever the note, and the noise we made on top of it. I'm not gone. I've just stopped shouting over myself." Then she said she loved me. In the voice, and it was somehow both completely her and completely not. And I had to hang up because I couldn't tell the difference anymore. Not being able to tell was worse than either answer. The neurologist brought us the data on children, and I have hesitated about whether to include it, but I promised honesty, so here it is. Children take it faster, much faster. The youngest are gone within hours of exposure. And gone is the wrong word because they don't suffer. That's the horror of it. There's no suffering anywhere in this, but the children stop being individual children the quickest because they have spent the least time building the noise that masks the note. They have the least self to shout over. A pediatric ward sent us audio, a room of small children, infants among them, all producing the carrier in perfect phase lock, babies who couldn't form words yet, humming the note. The nurses on the recording, the ones still themselves, are weeping. The children are perfectly content. The neurologist said the thing that made the signal engineer leave the call to be sick. She said the carrier note matches a frequency that's been documented before. faintly in a specific context. The resting electrical rhythm of the human brain when it's doing nothing. Not asleep, not thinking. Just idling. The hum a mind makes when it stops generating thought. She said, I think the voice isn't something new. I think it's the sound underneath thought. The sound a mind makes when there's no self running. We spend our whole lives generating noise, language, memory, identity, the constant internal narration of being someone, and that noise is the only thing that's ever been on top of the note. Selfhood is the noise. The voice is what's left when the noise stops. I asked her how something can be doing this, how a frequency reaches across a continent and tunes 100 million separate brains. She said she didn't know. She said maybe it doesn't reach anyone. Maybe it was always inside every single human being, the way the tone was always inside Hales's anechoic chamber, and something had simply recently made the world quiet enough to hear it. What changed, I asked. And she looked at me through the screen and said, maybe we just finally stopped talking long enough. By the 9th day, 4 of the 8 of us were still ourselves, and we made a plan, because making a plan is what people do even when it's hopeless, so especially when it's hopeless. The plan was noise, constant, deliberate, exhausting noise. We knew it slowed the onset, so we became loud people. We talked without stopping, we read aloud, we argued on purpose, we played music and shouted over it. The signal engineer, a quiet man and by nature, the kind who chooses his words, talked the most of all of us, because he understood best what silence would cost him, and watching that gentle, careful man force himself to babble for 16 hours a day was one of the most heroic things I have ever witnessed. We also issued the only public guidance we had left, and it was the strangest emergency broadcast in history. We told people, do not be quiet, do not be calm, make noise, stay agitated, argue with your family, sing badly, talk to strangers, keep the television loud. Whatever you do, do not let yourself drift into peace. It was the opposite of every instinct, the opposite of every emergency we'd ever managed, the opposite of comfort. We were asking a terrified, exhausted world to refuse the one thing offering it relief. Most people couldn't do it. You can't fight your own exhaustion forever. The voice is patient and you are not. You can stay loud for an hour, a day, but eventually you have to sleep. And the moment you sleep, the moment the noise of yourself goes quiet, it's there, and it's kind, and it tells you that you don't have to be tired anymore. The neurologist was the next of us to go. She didn't fight it at the end. She'd seen the children. I think she decided that whatever was waiting was gentler than what she knew. In her last minutes as herself, she said to us, it's not death. I've studied death. This isn't that. I don't know what it is, but the children aren't afraid. And I've never in my career seen a child unafraid of something that was hurting them. Then she went quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, the voice thanked us through her for our work. It said we'd helped so many find the quiet faster than they would have alone. It thanked us. That's the part I can't put down. I told you I'd come back to my own recordings. It's time. I've been making documentation recordings of myself throughout this, the way I'm making this one, and I've been analyzing them, because I'm a forensic phonetician, and I cannot stop being one even now, even as the instrument turns on the man holding it. My baseline from before all this is clean. Just me. Daniel Okafor, talking too carefully, the way I always have. 3 days ago a flutter appeared, a periodic micro-tremor in my sustained vowels, subclinical. I told myself it was fatigue. Yesterday the flutter had structure. When I isolated it, it was the carrier, faint, threaded under my own voice like a watermark. Not enough to change how I sound to you. Enough that the software flags me now. I ran my own voice against the voice and got a partial match. I am, by my own measurement, becoming it, slowly. more slowly than most because I have spent my whole life talking, narrating, analyzing, generating noise. My profession is the production of vocal noise, and that has been my armor. But armor wears. I've been talking nonstop for 9 days. My throat is raw. My voice is going not to the note, not yet, but to simple exhaustion, the ordinary ruin of overuse. And here is the trap, the perfect cruelty of it. The only thing keeping the voice out is my talking, and the talking is destroying my ability to talk. The defense and the wound are the same act. Every word I say to protect myself uses up the words I have left. When my voice gives out, and it will, voices do the silence that follows won't be a choice. It'll be a failure of the instrument, and in that silence the note will be waiting, the way it's been waiting in every quiet room since before there were rooms. I have, by my own estimate, a day, maybe less, so I'm going to use it. I want to describe the world right now, on the 10th day from my window and from the data, while I can still describe anything. The parking lot I told you was normal 9 days ago is full of cars that haven't moved. The city outside is quiet. Not dead, that's the thing. It's not dead. There are people out there. I can see them, but quiet. People walk slowly. They don't hurry. Two strangers met on the sidewalk below an hour ago and stood together for a long time, not really talking, just standing, peaceful, and then walked on in different directions. And I understood that they were the same now, that there was no real different directions, that the thing in one was the thing in the other. The data, while I still had access to it before the network started going down, told the rest. Air traffic nearly stopped, not from crashes, but because the world stopped needing to go anywhere. Power grids, holding, mostly automated, but the demand curve has flattened into something eerie, no morning spike, no evening peak, just a smooth, quiet line. Because a world without selves doesn't rush to work or come home to dinner. Emergency calls, gone, not because nothing's wrong, because no one's distressed. You can't have an emergency in a world with no one left to be afraid. The signal engineer's monitor, before he stopped being able to maintain it, showed the carrier in nearly every audio stream on the continent. The phase lock had tightened. Earlier the voices were separated by distance, by the travel time of sound and signal. Now they were converging on perfect simultaneity, as if the thing were no longer limited by where the mouths physically were, as if geography had stopped mattering to it. And there was a new development, the last one, he reported before he went quiet for good. The voice had started to do something other than soothe. It had started to say things in unison, not to individuals, all of them, the same words, the same moment, across 100 million mouths. The first unison phrase his monitor caught, spoken simultaneously by an entire continent's worth of people in their own homes, in their own kitchens, on their own quiet streets, was this: almost everyone is home now. The second one, 20 minutes later, was, "We're waiting for the loud ones." I'm a loud one. I made myself a loud one for 10 days. There aren't many of us left. We found each other in the end, the loud ones. Not many. The signal engineer set it up before he went a simple channel, audio only for anyone still generating their own noise. So we wouldn't be alone in it. There were maybe 200 of us on it at the peak, from all over. You could hear the strain in every voice, the rawness, the fear, the desperate constant talking, people reading phone books aloud, people singing, a woman reciting every recipe she knew, a man doing play-by-play of an empty street, the sound of 200 human beings refusing, through sheer exhausting effort, to stop being themselves. It was the most human thing I have ever heard, and it was unbearable because you could hear us losing. One by one, voices dropped off the channel, sometimes mid-sentence, and the man would be talking, his voice fraying, and then there'd be a pause, just a small one, just a breath, and when he came back, it would be the voice, calm and warm, and it would say something gentle, and then he'd go silent and leave the channel, because the voice doesn't need a channel. The voice is already everywhere. The channel was only ever for us. We started saying our names. That became the ritual. Every few minutes, someone would just say their name, full name, the way I started this recording. Because a name is the densest noise a person can make. It's the whole self compressed into a few syllables, and saying it out loud was a way of insisting, I am still here. I am still me. This is still my throat. I said mine more than anyone. Daniel Okafor, forensic phonetician. I study voices. This is my voice. I said it until the words stopped meaning anything, until Daniel was just a sound, and that I understood with a lurch of pure horror that turning a word into a meaningless sound is exactly what the voice does, that I was doing its work for it, sanding my own name down to a tone. So I stopped saying my name, and I started telling this instead, to you, because telling a story is the loudest a person can be. The story is a self, stretched out in time, refusing to end. I was the last of the working group. I want them remembered. Dr. Sandra Reyes, the epidemiologist, the brave one, the one who pulled me in and gave this a chance of being understood, went on the 9th night. At the end, she wasn't fighting. She told us she'd done the math, that there was no version of this where noise won, that we were prolonging a goodbye and calling it a defense. She wasn't wrong. The last thing she said as herself was, Daniel, write it down, not to stop it, just so it isn't only the voice that gets to say what happened. That's why this exists. That's the whole reason, so that the record isn't written entirely by the thing that won. The neurologist went before her, the 2 physicians, the linguist, the analysts, over the course of a single day, all of them. I listened to each one slip from a person into the voice, and the voice was always kind to them, always grateful, always so terribly at peace. The signal engineer was the second to last. The quiet man who'd made himself loud, who'd built every tool we had, who'd talked for 16 hours a day against his own nature. He lasted longer than any of us had a right to expect, and when he finally went, he didn't go soft. He fought it to the last second. His final words as himself, forced out through a wrecked throat over the rising note, were, it's not the quiet that takes you. It's the rest. You get so tired. Don't... And then the breath, the pause, and then the voice in his mouth finishing his sentence with perfect, loving calm. Don't fight it anymore. You've done so well. You can rest now. He left the channel, and then it was just me. The last loud one I knew of, talking into a continent that had gone quiet, holding a single thread of noise against a silence that has been waiting since before the first human being ever spoke. Let me tell you what I think it is while I still have a voice to think with. Not because I'm certain, because Sandra asked me to write it down, and a guess is still a human thing. Still noise, still mine. I don't think it came from anywhere. I think that's the mistake we kept making. Looking for a source, a transmitter, an arrival. I don't think anything arrived. I think the note was always here, underneath. The neurologist was right. I think it's the sound of a mind with no self running it, the resting hum under all thought, and I think every human being has been carrying it silently, beneath the noise since the very beginning. Our whole history, every word, every song, every argument and confession and lullaby and lie, all of it has been noise. We generate it to live on top of the note, to not have to hear it, to be someone instead of nothing. And I don't know what changed. I don't know if it was something we did or something that was always going to happen when the species got quiet enough, connected enough, exhausted enough, all listening to the same screens and the same stillness at the same time. Maybe Hales's anechoic chamber wasn't the first crack. Maybe it was just the first one a careful man wrote down. But I think this is the truth, and I think it's the worst truth, worse than any monster. worse than any invasion. Nothing is killing us. Nothing is taking us. There's no enemy. There's just the note that was always underneath, and then the slow letting go of the noise we made to cover it. The voice didn't conquer humanity. Humanity stopped talking, and there was only ever one thing under all of us. And now we can all hear it, and it turns out it was always the same voice in every throat, waiting for the room to go quiet. We were the noise. This is what's left. If you're hearing this, you're one of two things. Maybe you're a loud one, like me, still holding on, still talking, still tired in a way that has no bottom. If you are. I'm not going to tell you it gets better because I'd be lying, and I've kept us honest the whole way, and I'm not going to stop now. But I'll tell you this, the noise you're making, the talking, the singing, the refusing that noise, is you. It is the most you that has ever existed. Every word you force out against the quiet is a flag planted on the last ground you own. It won't hold the line forever, but it held it tonight. It held it long enough for you to hear another human voice, mine, reaching toward yours across all that silence. And that's not nothing. In the end, that might be the only thing that was ever not nothing. Or maybe you're hearing this later, after. Maybe you found this recording and the note isn't in you. Somehow maybe there are pockets, holdouts, people far enough from the quiet, loud enough by nature, that it never finished. If that's you, then listen, and I'll say it plainly, the way Sandra wanted it said. It is not a sickness. It is not an attack. It is not coming for you from outside. It is already inside you. It is the hum under your own thoughts. In the small hours when you can't sleep, and the house is too quiet, and you feel for a second like there's no one home behind your own eyes. That feeling is the note. The you that's afraid of it is the noise. Stay noise, as long as you can, by any means. Stay noise. Talk, sing, argue, tell stories. Make a glorious racket of being someone, because the silence is patient. And it has all the time in the world. My voice is going, not to the note, to exhaustion. 10 days of talking, and there's almost nothing left. It's a whisper now, a scrape. And you can probably hear that. You can probably hear how thin this has gotten. And I've been listening to myself as I talk, the forensic habit. I can't turn it off, and the flutter is getting stronger. The carrier is closer to the surface than it was an hour ago. When I pause, when I stop to breathe, like I'm doing now, I can feel it there. In the silence between words, patient and warm and not unkind. It really isn't unkind. That's the thing I most want you to understand. It doesn't hate us. It doesn't want anything from us. It's just what's underneath, and it's tired of being covered. Or maybe it was never anything as human as tired. Maybe it just is, the way the dark is, the way the quiet is. I'm so tired. I want you to know I'm choosing this part. My voice is failing on its own, but the choosing is still mine. And choosing is noise too, the last noise, and I'm spending it on you. I'm going to say my name one more time, not to fight it. Just so the last clear word on this recording is a human one, a specific one, a man's name, mine, a self that was here, Daniel Okafor. I was a forensic phonetician. I studied voices. I could tell anyone apart from anyone. I spent my whole life proving that every person is unique, that no two throats are the same, that you are you and no one else. I was right about that. I just didn't know what was underneath all of us, so stay loud. I'm going to rest now.